Carter Stein, who is the project manager, and Adam Helvey, who is the agency liaison. Hopefully I covered everybody, but you're going to hear from all of us today as we go through this presentation. So let me share the slide deck. Can folks see the slide deck?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's take a look at what we are going to cover today. So we're going to talk about the major deliverables for the next 6 months and the agency core team tasks and due dates. So we can see that sort of all in one slide and see what's coming up. We're going to talk about ORS 190s in Oregon buys. Deanna's going to talk about agency-specific testing as it relates to ORPN replacement. Adam is going to share the Workday Drive that he has set up for getting to materials. We'll share some go live transition reminders and do an update on vendor registration. So it's a lot to get through, but I think you guys will find this information very helpful. So to start, Carter, do you want to take it away with major deliverables?
Thank you, Nicole. I can do that. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a busy slide with a lot of words on it, but I think the focus for the joint project team is just under the middle of the slide, and it is our milestone that's about 64 days out and the ORPN replacement go live. Top of the slide, we're showing a number of the deliverables that have been completed. We're doing some final work on the updated functional design document. That's a document that's about 230 pages or so of a business process that's being gone through with a fine-tooth comb. And then we have the documentation of the agency waves that the agencies have been selected actually selected their waves, and the wave assignments have been confirmed and communicated out to the agencies. But we're going to write that up as a formal document. Supplier enablement is ongoing, and then as we move through time with working with the agency core teams, we're going to configure the ORPN replacement into its final state. And there's a lot of work going on with the report templates at this point. A number of the reports, I think 4 of them right now, are in review cycle. Not all of the ORPN replacement reports are going to be available at go live because some of them depend on the reconciler and VSR reporting tool. So that part of the system is going to be implemented in July. So those reports will be available after that. Then looking after the deliverables that we're looking at after our ORPN replacement phase 1 go live, doing the basically bringing the rest of the ORCAPs on board and doing the integrations with SFMS and continuing the phase 2 training material development, and also doing work on the systems integrations monitoring report. So those are the main deliverables for the next 6 months, and I'll pause for any questions. Jenny, I think it goes to you for the agency core team tasks.
I have a question if there's still time.
Sure, absolutely.
So if you could please just help me understand item 8.1. I'm not sure I understand what that means exactly, and I'm no accountant, but so maybe it does to accounting people. But in the waves, when the waves start in phase 2, they're expected to last approximately 8 months. And when in that 8-month period, when does the financial part of the transition at an agency begin?
I'm going to take a stab at it, but I would like Nicole probably to jump in. So during the 8-month period for the wave, the agency is going to be going through the process to configure their business to do the end-to-end parts of their procurement. That will all be in test until the go live for the wave. After the go live for the wave, then the agency will be totally on board. Remember that Secretary of State and Department of Forestry are currently using the system in its full-blown nature. It's using our phase 1 capabilities, the orphan replacement capabilities, and it's doing end-to-end procurement. So the system is running, and the work during the waves is to bring agency business processes up to speed so that it can begin using the system that's running. So I want to give to Nicole and see if you could add to that.
Sure. So we haven't talked a whole lot in detail about phase 2, at least not recently with the DPOs, but just at a high level. The phase 2 functionality brings on internal requisitions for your agency, and then it also brings on board purchase orders, receiving, invoicing, and then interfacing over to R-Stars for most agencies, if you're ODOT, to Teams, to release payment. So at the time that your agency completes your wave in phase 2, that is when you will do those functions in Oregon Buys. And so we would be at that point importing your account code segments from R-Stars or from Teams, and you would be able to do those actual purchasing activities in the system at that point. And that's the financial piece that you're talking about. So really your wave of phase 2 is doing testing on that, getting trained on that, all of the types of things that we're doing right now for Orphan, but really focused on those purchasing activities.
Thank you, Nicole and Carter. I appreciate that. So, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to just keep at this, but I'm just still not quite clear. So in that phase 2 or that wave, and throughout that 8 months, I hear the testing and all those components. So is accounting participating in that? Or do they wait until the end of the 8 months and then they start?
Oh, I see what you're asking, Sharon. No, they're absolutely participating in that. So the core teams that the agencies have that they're working through the phase 1 work right now will continue. The members of the core teams may shift a little bit, but the idea is that those core teams would continue and do a similar type of process for phase 2. So we would need to know what additional users that we need to bring on in the system and get their roles. We would need to potentially do some configurations that are agency specific that have to do with like invoices, for example, or something that's that phase 2 functionality. We do testing and the accounts payable folks would be involved in all of that for your agency. So the core team members, it would be very similar to what we're doing now, just kind of different functionality that we're focused on.
So similar to what we're doing, but adding in accounting folks.
Right.
Okay. All right. So much help. Thank you.
Good. Good. Thanks.
There's also, we can share, there was an example timeline of that 8-month, how it broke out with the wave sign up. We can send that out after this meeting as just now that it's real and you're in a wave if you all would like.
That's a great idea, Jenny. Any other questions on this major deliverable slide? Okay, we'll move on and we'll hand it to you, Jenny.
All right. So one of the things that we heard from the feedback of what the DPO council was that we were lacking was everything that's on the core team's plate right now. And so we pulled together all of the tasks and when various pieces of work are due for phase 1. So this is basically from today through July 1st. And we're sharing it with you all. This will be a kind of a desk reference. We We introduced this starting on Monday morning with the Session 5 core teams. We're sharing it with ABSD. We're sharing it with, everybody we're talking to right now, so that this is a consistent message out there. So we appreciate the suggestion and are making it live. And if there are any, I won't read line items to you, but if you have any specific questions about any of the actual tasks or the responsible person or the due date, please feel free to ask.
Hey, Jenny, it's Tony over at DOC.
Yes.
I have just one question, and I kind of wonder if everybody's not scratching their heads a little bit like I am. Hopefully they are. But when Orpin goes dark on the 16th, could we post something on the 15th and have it, just sit in there? Or is it truly going to be dark where people can't actually see and then have them respond after the 1st of July? Or do we just totally stop everything? Can you help me with how you see that part working?
I saw Nicole.
I was just going to say, do you want me to jump in?
I mean, it's read only. Yes, go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, so basically after or as of the 16th, you wouldn't be able to post anything new in Orpin, and you wouldn't be able to make changes to things in Orpin. However, things would still be visible in Orpin. Now, that being said, we are looking into if there's ways that we might be able to put some, so we'll have something on the landing page of Orpin, like the main page that you go to, information there. We're looking to see if there's a way that we might be able to add like a label across the top on documents or something, just sort of so that we can, as much as possible, make it really obvious to people that are viewing documents, but we're still doing some testing on exactly what that will look like. When we get that figured out, I'm happy to share that maybe at a future DPO meeting. But yes, I suppose you could do something that you would post and it would be visible, but it wouldn't be anything you could ever edit.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for clarifying that.
And if you were really wanting people to respond 2 weeks later in Oregon Buys, maybe an idea would be to put it as coming soon, register in Oregon Buys so that you can respond, not the real opportunity in Orpin, because somebody may say, well, I tried to go in and respond and I couldn't get into it. So maybe that's a good advertisement means.
This is Jan, and I have a question about some of the items you've listed that the due date is core team session 5. And so I'm in core team session 6 and 7. So I'm assuming that there will be outcomes or deliverables from those sessions, but you just don't have a due date on them?
So we're in core team in session 5. The deliverable was to collect the list of reports and to identify any approval processes. So that's discussion and getting folks to realize this is the time to make those determinations for their agencies. Agency specific testing in 6 and 7, if agencies have processes that are different than the enterprise, or if they just want to test, that will be facilitated there. So those are they're really, that's the opportunity for the core team to really bring everything to the table at those sessions.
Okay, thank you. And then the identify approval processes, that would just be approval processes that are a part of phase 1, right?
Absolutely. This is only phase 1. You betcha.
All right.
Anything else? All right. We can move on to the next slide, which is about ORS 190s.
Sorry, it took me a second to get off mute. I have a question if you can go back.
Okay.
How does the self-paced online training videos differ from the facilitated training for staff who post solicitations and notices, or are they one and the same thing?
No, no, the self-paced are short online modules. They're the 15 or 20 minute, just small bites of the bigger, so that if you needed to go back and you don't need to go through the whole how to do a PO, but you need to know how to set up approvers, you can go view just that little piece.
Okay,
and they are not organ specific. Those are the ePro, which is Periscope's name for our organ buys.
So is that going to be more for ORPN users or accounting users?
Well, we're only they're going to be throughout the project. In this first phase, there are the modules that go into that will reinforce the facilitated training. So that would be for basic procurement, basic purchaser roles. There are some really high level like general navigation and marketplace shopper that we hope to have out at the very latest week after next. But those are for like department access, somebody that needs to just go in and see what's on a price agreement, browsing the marketplace, or for sending over something on behalf of. It's minimal. So there are two groups in this first group, but the procurement professionals obviously have the bigger lift and the facilitated training. There'll be a whole nother set for the procure to pay.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at, because we're in phase 3.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have people do training this summer that isn't applicable to anything they're actually going to be doing until 2023.
Right. And besides general navigation and marketplace shopper, there wouldn't be anything that would apply to their, no AP role work is developed yet. I mean, training is developed yet.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so can I just interrupt for 1 second, because I want to make sure that we're getting to everybody's comments. I assume, Nicole, you're looking at the comments too. But Shannon asked a question, and we also had a question from Josh. So how would you like to address that, Nicole?
Yeah, so I just responded to Shannon in the comments. So any solicitations that are posted in ORPN need to close before June 16th. But we also later in this presentation today have some slides to go back over those dates. So I think we'll cover it there. Jenny, I don't know if you want to speak to Josh's question. Can you see that?
I'll take a look.
And then it looks like Sharon just sent.
Ask an unanticipated cost related to organ buys, other than, for example, would there be organ buys features agencies would be interested in but won't? Not. No, there's not anything for 21-23 that you would buy outside the system.
Well, what about the life cycle management? I hate to bring it up, sorry. Jenny.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we could potentially get.
Yeah, I'm not prepared for that.
Okay.
To even talk about what that would cost or what that looks like. If Melissa, I know you all, we talked about that a while back, but it was really enterprise licensing pricing, and so can we take that offline?
Josh, yeah, you might want to talk to him offline. I don't know if you're looking at the contract, but I also know they're talking about electronic signatures too. So I don't know if I can just tell you that I don't know if different agencies are doing different things with the electronic signatures. I know that DHS is using one of the platforms. I know ODOT's going to use Adobe. So I don't know about electronic signatures. Do you know anything about that either, Jenny?
Well, when I asked about it this week, there's not any requirement for it except in contract lifecycle management. And so, I mean, there's nothing in what we're proposing that would require, or what we're implementing that would require it right now. So if the agency has some requirement, we would have to work that offline.
So just to clarify, does that mean that electronic signatures are not a part of the implementation of phase 1 and phase 2?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So you have a couple more questions in here. Sharon wants to see a copy of the contract and exhibits.
Okay, I'll send you the ORPN number. Would that be okay? Because you can take a look at it.
That'd be perfect. Thank you. The one that's
Okay.
up is just not the right one.
And then Tom is asking again about posting solicitations on 6/6/16 and then continue it in organ buys after 7/1.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to get to that transition in just a little bit. And we're going to spend some more time on that, how that overlap works. Okay. 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 Oh, sorry, Sharon. Yeah, we have a separate work order. Yeah. I'll send you that number. Anything else? All right. That's okay.
Okay. Want to
So,
the 90s?
Yeah. So the ORS 190s are in scope for phase 1 for getting, we have, I mean, every agency has to post their ORS 190s. The reporting, we've never been asked for it, but we always could. So as we started looking at the number of contracts and work orders and ORS 190s that people had, there are a lot of them. And so because of the short amount of time to actually go in and finish and get all of the contracts into sent status before we go live, we realized this was kind of an unworkable lift for a lot of folks. And there are a lot of ORS 190s that are kind of one and done that maybe don't need to be moved over. So we kind of came to a compromise, and what we're suggesting is that you do look at your 190s and you determine all of those that could be, that will live on, and at least get them in the original upload. They'll sit in process, which is basically draft. And then when you need to amend it or revise it, then you would do it in organ buys and get it into sent status. For those that right away, and every new one needs to go into organ buys. For all of those others that will continue to live, but there's not any work right away. We realize we got a lot to do right off the bat. So we said, let's go live and let's work on as much of these, let's just work through the end of the year and see how far we can get. We hesitate putting a deadline because that seems to always, in my nature, it's like, oh, I've got till then to do it, and then arrives. So it's just got to be, I mean, it's work that's got to get done, but we're not putting a deadline, but they will be in process. One of the other challenges and the reason for giving time on this is the vendors for 190s do have to register. And that is a little, we probably have more of ORS 190 vendors that need to register than our regular vendors. And when it's time for you to take an action on the 190, the person doing that work has some leverage to get the provider on the 190 or the vendor to get registered. So we think there's it'll be more productive in doing this way. So yeah, Shannon, you're exactly right. Yeah, it's about the vendors. And how will it work if the other government party to the agreement isn't registered? Well, they're going to have to get registered. I'm confused. All right, that was Shannon asking a question and Nicole answered it and I answered it out loud. So are there any questions? Does this feel like a good option for at least being able to ease into it?
Well, this is Tony again. I did have a question and I sent it to you, Ginny, but I don't know if other ones would wonder this too, but we have, for example, some for Clackamas County Sheriff, and we have looked in Oregon Buys and they have Clackamas County. So how do we know if that vendor number would transfer over for the Sheriff's Department, for example? Do we know that or do we assume that, or how do we move forward with those questions?
Jenny, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's tax ID
right
number, and Adam actually was going to respond to you, Tony. I'm sorry. But Nicole, if you know the full answer, once again, I'll ask for a lifeline.
So, in Oregon Buys, all vendors have to register with a tax ID. And so if the Clackamas County Sheriff's Department has the same tax ID as Clackamas County, then there would be one Clackamas County registration. And so as you're uploading your ORS 190, that's the vendor that you would select, and then you can provide additional detail either in your short description, aka title, or in your attachment if you're scanning your ORS 190 and attaching it. But that's the way that we have vendor registration set up, is that it requires tax ID, and that keeps our vendor database very clean. We don't have all the duplicates like we have in Orpin today.
Great, thank you.
How are the agencies?
Other questions or comments?
I have a quick question, Michelle, from State Lands. What is your method of notifying all the governmental entities and agencies to register in Oregon Buy so that we can have the 190s in there?
So that's a great question. I don't know that we have talked specifically about doing enterprise level outreach to those agencies. I will say that there are probably a good portion of them that have already registered, just because I know Secretary of State uploaded all of their ORS 190s already, and they did a lot of outreach to the other parties on their agreements. And so that vendor report that agencies have been able to, I think we're requesting that from Tony. I don't know if that's something that's been pushed out or if agencies are asking for it, but that report that shows all the registered vendors, it would include all of those state agencies or local governments that have created a vendor registration. They would all be in there as well. So we can look at that, but I don't know that we have talked about an enterprise level outreach to state agencies and local governments to ask them to do a vendor registration.
The locals we have, ORCAP members, which is 800 or so of the locals. So we have that subset, and they can use Oregon Buys for posting notices and searching, browsing marketplace. So they're part of the communications, and we have separated. You have two roles here. You're more than likely a vendor to some of agencies, and so you need to register on both sides. We also have ORS 190s with all of the ORCAPs, so they need to be registered for us to move ours over. So we have reached out to that subset, but wholesale, every ORS 190 vendor we have not.
And
so,
if I could,
go ahead, Lil.
okay, thanks. And I will say that as an agency, we have already reached out to all of the schools and the school districts and the education districts and the charter schools. We have been in contact with them. And then the business managers meeting, which we have on this coming Friday, will also once again bring this up to say, you need to register
That's
So we're doing all
fantastic.
that we can from the school side to
That's-
get the word out that to do, get registered.
That's absolutely, and that's getting to the people that need those agreements, which has some teeth to it.
Yeah.
The other thing, Jenny, too, that I'm thinking, this is Michelle again, that it sounds to me like all agencies really need to register themselves because we do a lot of batch transactions or, we have interagency agreements with one another for one reason or another. And I just wanted to know, is that something that DAS is doing, or is that something that we need to take on ourselves? And what kind of communication is going on about that?
Sorry, Jenny, I keep jumping.
No, there's a chat. Yeah, there's a chat going on with exactly that. So yeah. Y'all thinking that.
So the agencies need to create their own registration. DAS is not going to register state agencies as vendors. But I do want to speak to, you mentioned something about the batch transfers, and Oregon Buys does not facilitate the batch transfers between agencies. So if an agency needs to do a batch transfer of funds to another agency, that has to happen outside of the system.
Until phase 2, right, Nicole?
No.
Always gonna, okay.
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
I hate to confuse things and do too much discussing of phase 2 type stuff, but
Right.
basically, if you did have an agreement that you needed to pay funds to a local government, that can be done through the system because that wouldn't be done as a batch transfer. A warrant could be cut for that. But the batch transfers between agencies, we can't facilitate that through our interface.
Okay, thank you.
And
yep.
Karen McLean asked that on this, does that include the small agencies that DAS is setting up? And it does. We can't register we can't register vendors. That's part of this solution.
Right. I think Tom had a great question, and I'm just going to say it out loud for folks who might not be online where they can see the chat. But if a state agency wants to, they can go in and create their vendor registration now. So yes, Mandy, system can't do balance transfers. Batch transfers. Sorry, I'm not an expert on the exact lingo. The transferring of funds from one state agency to another, that cannot be facilitated through Oregon Buys interface.
All right. Well, we will move on to the next slide. Thank you all.
Hello, this is Deanna Harris. So agency-specific testing. So we're going to start talking about testing during the core team meetings starting on 5/10. I believe those are session 6 or 6 and 7. I think we're talking testing. So the testing is conducted by the core team members unless they designate someone else in their own space. Some of the core team members, I think, have identified on some of the calls that it wouldn't be them, or when they're not the right person. So it's usually going to be someone on the core teams because they've been involved in all the conversations, but they may decide to have someone else on their team or in their agency do the testing. So agencies can test the enterprise scenarios that everyone is all the core teams are currently reviewing in the functional design document and adding their additional processes. So we are cleaning up the enterprise scenarios, and we're going to send those out to agencies. So it's in a nice Word document, and then they'll have any additional processes that they have identified during this current review that they are going through. And then all issues, if agencies during their testing, if they're finding any bugs or things like that, those will be reported to me, and then I will report them to PHI. And so I will be your middleman for that. And then agency is going to hold office hours. We're going to do 2-hour sessions, 1 day a week, and we're going to hold those from from 5/13 to 6/3. So it's 4 weeks that we're going to do the agency testing, and it's really, agency testing is really on your own. Some agencies may choose, smaller agencies may choose not to do testing, whereas some of the larger ones or ones that have additional processes will do testing. So it's kind of on your own. Does anyone have any questions regarding that?
Is it going to be live testing, or is that just going to be fictitious contracts out there for us to look at?
It's all on your own. We're going to talk about it during the core team meetings, and I think they're going to go through maybe some of the screens in the core team meetings, and then any additional kind of steps that you need help with, we'll talk about in those office hours. But it really is on your own. It's not walking you through anything. And again, those we will be handing out the enterprise scenarios, and those do have step-by-step. So if you're not quite sure, or if you need a little bit of guidance, those are will also be very helpful. Maybe you don't need to run that scenario, but something close to it, those step-by-steps that we have in the enterprise scenarios might be helpful for your own processes.
Will that be in a live environment?
They are doing the testing in the UAT, the testing in the UAT environment.
It won't have real data, if that's
No.
what the question is.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we are going to do the hand out the enterprise scenarios. We just got them back. We had them updated from when we did enterprise scenarios. And so the project team's just going to walk through them. And then as we get to the those core team meetings on 5/10, we will hand those out. Yes. For those who do not understand testing, can you explain that more? So testing is, and it's really more of a validation. The system's already being used by Secretary of State and Forestry. So what we're doing here is validating any additional agency-specific processes that you guys may have outside of the enterprise scenarios that we have already run through and tested. And so it's really taking anything that you have additional and running those steps in the system and making sure that they work. Does that answer your question, Sharon?
It does somewhat. Thank you.
Okay. Is there, I can get in, I mean, is there any more detail that what detail are you looking for, Sharon?
I think, I mean, I personally have never done software testing, so I don't really know when you say UTI and test.
Yeah.
I don't speak that language, so I don't have a clue what you're saying.
Exactly. And so, Sharon, what this really is at this point is really validation. You're validating. It's not necessarily system testing because the system's already been tested and is currently being used by 2 agencies. What you're doing really is validating your agency processes, or if you want to run through the enterprise processes as well, and make sure that they're working for you, they work for your agency. And also, it's another really good way for users to get in and use the system and get familiar.
Deanna, can I add on to that? So,
yeah.
So just to reiterate, so this is not folks needing to go in and try to look for like bugs in the system. It's not that type of testing. It's going into the system. And so, for example, at the enterprise level, during enterprise testing, we ran scenarios like a request for proposal, posting that and receiving responses from the vendors on that, and then moving that forward, and kind of all of the different pieces that would happen during that. And if your agency has something unique that you do during that type of a process, or you just want to run through what we ran through at the enterprise level again and just sort of see how that will work, you would run through that piece and you'd run through that process and just make sure that that will meet your needs needs. And if there's anything that is unique to your agency, then you can kind of say, okay, here's how we would deal with that. Get input from Periscope if that's needed on how you might be able to deal with that type of a situation. So it's really testing the process stuff, not the system functionality. You're not, like I said, you're not looking for defects. You're testing your processes.
Yes, Sharon, yikes. That is not what we're doing here.
So I have another question. So it sounds to me like we need to figure out some of our own things we want to be sure to test on, or is that going to, are you going to have instructions for us on how we should go in the test environment and do things? Or do we need to figure that out on our own?
So part of that is currently what agencies are doing right now in the core team meetings. They're identifying, they're reviewing that functional design document, which has all the enterprise scenarios in them. And then they're identifying additional processes outside of those. So that process is currently being done. And then when we hit those core team meetings in May, then we're going to help you walk through how to test those additional processes that you have identified.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
This is Archana. Can we get a copy of this slide deck, please, at the end of this meeting?
Absolutely. I usually send it to Kim, and I think she posts it on the DPO website.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Shannon, Rand, thank you for those examples. I think that's very helpful. So exactly things like someone wants to buy something under informal procurement process or a formal procurement process. Those are the types of scenarios that you might run through and do tests on.
All right, nobody has any other questions? Nicole, it's back to you.
I do have one more question. Sorry, as I'm thinking about this. So let's say, you know, we've ran through some testing and the core team has, you know, identified a few things, and we go into live environment and we discover things that we didn't think of before, or scenarios that might be new, or scenarios that we didn't discover during this time. Are those things that we're going to be able to work out after the fact? After we're live, and will Periscope be able to still help us with our internal processes in making those changes?
So you mean, okay, so after July 1, you're saying if you find some processes that you didn't think of right now, you mean after July, right?
Right, like we say we didn't identify some of the changes or processes within our agency that you know, we realized right now.
Yes, we will. Deanna, I can help. So
okay,
Michelle, we will definitely have resources to help you figure out how the system can help you facilitate what you need to do. Because that's really this. We're not modifying the system. We're trying to help you build process. So absolutely,
and figure that out. Okay.
Stuck here. And I will tell you that to be processed document, which is, you know, what the core teams have been going through, trying to look at, is there anything that we do that's not on here? That's really where there are gaps. Is those are things that you're probably going to concentrate on, and that is a lengthy document. Right. And we you know, Secretary of State is our go-to, and they have 2 years worth of figuring things out, which we have leveraged very heavily. But yes, we are absolutely going to help you figure out how to make it work to get your business done.
Okay, that's good to know, because we always are running across unique situations at our agency, and I just want to be sure that we have the capability to figure it out. So I appreciate that, Jenny. Thank you.
Sure.
So this is Lil. In the document, the review document that I've been looking at, it says agency requester in the little blocks. And so, you know, they initiate the request. And then block, it might say agency buyer, meaning that the next step is agency buyer. But what if in our world, in education world, there's a little step between those two that it has to route through IT for approval before it can go to procurement? Is that what I need to document? Is different than from agency requester to agency buyer?
I feel like this this was brought up in the education core team meeting, and I feel like that was outside the system, and that would continue to be outside the system, if I recall correctly. I don't know if Nicole or Jenny were still on that call, but I thought that was the response to almost that exact same question. Was, you know, we have certain things. There's a step in there that we do. And you would want to document that, but I think those are outside the system. So they would still happen, but they just wouldn't happen by a role in the system. Is that right, Nicole? Did I speak to that?
Well, yeah, so I think that's the kind of stuff that's worth talking through during the core team meetings, because I think there are several different ways that can happen. So what we're not doing is we're not sending like the request for EIS approval or DOJ approval. Those things are not being facilitated through Oregon Buys, but your agency might have something where you want all procurements that have an IT commodity code used to go through a certain approval group or something like that, and you might set up an approval path for it. So there are different ways you might address it, and it's definitely something that you can mention during the core team meeting, because that's something that they can kind of talk through what's going to make the most sense for your agency.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Nicole, so what you're saying is we're still going to use a lot of our same processes we do now outside of Oregon Buys, such as sending our documents to DOJ for legal sufficiency review and such.
We're looking to automate as much as we can, but the DOJ approval and the EIS approval will continue to happen outside of the system.
Okay,
yes.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I don't want to cut off questions, but I also know we're about halfway through our presentation, and Melissa, I'm not sure how much else is on the agenda, but I don't want to go too far past our time. Can we continue? Do you need us to sum up?
Let me look at the time. So I think we're going to have to wrap it up. So if you could just give us the high points of this, and we can move on, because we've eaten up the last 15 minutes that we were going to use for something else, and that's okay, because this is actually more important. But okay. Go ahead, if you can just do the high points, and we can move on to our next presenter, which is Marguerita Nunez.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask is if there are any other questions on agency-specific testing, please email those over to us, or you can put it in the chat, and we'll try to send answers. But we'll move on to our next topic here. So that would be Adam. Adam, are you with us?
I am.
Wonderful. I'll have you talk about the Workday Drive.
Yeah, thanks so much. So we put this in place so that there was a centralized place for all the documents, templates, guides, things that were specific to the homework, and also the recording. So we've finally figured out a way to drop everything in, and I've sorted it by supplier outreach tools, vendor lists. So the Oregon Buys vendors that are all registered in the system. We create a list weekly on Mondays. Tony provides that for us, so I drop that in there. We have the OA templates, guides, and with the most recent versions in there, and then the core team slide decks and recordings as well. So really, to access this slide demonstrates it pretty well. If you log into Workday, there's up in the top right-hand corner, a lot of people will actually have uploaded some sort of picture of themselves or, a custom picture. But if you haven't uploaded anything in there, then it's just going to be that generic looking cloud. And then once you click on that, it'll give you this drop down demonstrated in the center of the screen, and you'll see you click on Drive, and that's where you'll find it. I don't think I'll actually demo it just because we're shorter on time. But that's where you'll find this. And then I do have to share it with people, individuals. So if you have somebody that needs access to it, just let me know that doesn't already. All the DPOs have access, all the OAs for their teams have access, but I do need to find them. And if you have a really common name, like a last name of Smith or something, it only shows me the name and the OR number, so I may need the OR number to locate the person, but that's essentially it. Is there any questions on that? Carter and I were talking about adding a training component and a testing component in here as well. So that's something we're looking into as another resource.
All right. Is there anything else, folks, that you'd like to share? We'll have more on the agenda next month as well. So if people are interested in very specific topics or questions that you have, please send them to Jan or I, because we do meet with DAS ahead of time to make sure that we're listening to you folks and then relaying information back to them about things that are really important for you to know about. So thank you very much for your time, Nicole and Carter and everyone else who's presented today, and Jenny, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on, and we're going to turn this over to Marguerita, and she's going to talk about the COBID certified firms and solicitations.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Oh, let me move my camera. I'll be sharing my screen. Let's see. My name is Marguerita Nunez, and I'm in with DCPS. I've been with DCPS for 23 years, 8 years in centralized procurement, as long as Nancy Cody's been DPO. And I was asked to speak on COBID and solicitations and how we deal with that in DCPS. So can everybody hear me? I just want to make sure I can be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. In using COBID, we use it two different ways. One is in a non-solicitation mode, we may use it for something like promotional items, although maybe we're not using that as much. One of the common things we do is for promotional items is we will go into COBID, and this is the COBID website. I'm not sure, I should have started with, this is the certified vendor directory. This is where you will search for COBID firms. It's on the Business Oregon website. And so there's a link on the Business Oregon website itself. I'll actually switch back. Business Oregon, this is the Business Oregon website. There's a button here, Directory of Certified Firms. And when you click that, you end up here. So when we are looking for an example of promotional items, and these would be, people call them swag also. We will go in here and we'll put promotional. And this one's fairly simple. It's kind of like Orpin. You kind of have to play with your words, and I'll show you on my second example what I mean by playing with the words. Of course, these has CAPTCHAs, so you have to click on those. The first time I think you go into, I've been on this this page for a little bit today, and so the first time you go in there, you'll have little funny CAPTCHA pictures. They'll have you click on them. So when I put in promotional items, it comes up with quite a few names, and if I'm going to be pursuing a solicitation from this, then I'm going to go into the entity itself. And unfortunately, you may end up having a lot of entities. But what I use this for is not only for contact information, because when we actually at DCBS created our own chart of promotional item companies. So we did a search. We had one of our procurement assistant do a search of all promotional item companies and actually contact them for some pricing for the most common items that we buy, and actually created a chart by contacting the people on the COBID firms. So, but if I was to do a solicitation on this, then I would go to the commodity codes where you have the NIGP codes. And those NIGP codes, then I would use them in a solicitation on Orpin, so that when I'm doing my posting, believe it's the last page in the posting, you ask to invite certified firms. These are the codes I'm going to have in my on Orpin. And when you click on a certified firm, it will pull up these different companies, and you may end up with a lot of companies on some of these. So this one's fairly straightforward. If there were only a few, and to be honest, there's more here than there ever was before. I think when we did this some years back, there weren't very many, and we actually were able to contact them directly and be able to do business with several of them. So this was our effort to try to increase our COVID certified firms, because it's very difficult for us at DCBS. A lot of the contracts we do are professional services, and so it's a little bit harder. Does anybody have any questions on this information? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. It gives you a lot of good information of what type of certification they have, as well as the different codes that they have. So my other example is, and from here you can clear parameters. So you can clear your parameters, and then you can look up your next business that you want. And I'm sorry, I can't see comments. So let's see.
Well, is there anybody still here from Oregon Buys?
Yes, this is Nicole.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Do you see the question, Nicole?
Yes. How will COVID connect to Oregon Buys? So we do already have an existing interface to bring in COVID certifications from the COVID database into Oregon Buys. It is just to the level of saying whether or not a vendor has a certification. So they are an ESB certified firm or a WBE certified firm. It doesn't actually contain like the commodity that they're certified in. And that information, the COVID database would be the system of record for that.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. And I'm actually going to jump off for another meeting. So if there are other questions, please feel free to email those over to me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So the next business that DCBS does quite a bit of work with are actuarial firms. I think it's DHS that does some contracts with actuarial firms. So the one thing we found with actuarial firms, and this is like Orpin, if I were to look up actuary, which is what these people are called, they're called actuaries, and I look for an actuary firm. Oh, here's the lights. Oops, I missed one. How many pieces are going to make me do? Let's see. Okay, when I look up actuary firms, it gives me one. And so again, when I go into the certification link, then I will see that it has a NIGB code of 94612, and which I will enter into Orpin, as well as 91849 to broaden my search. Now, the one thing about actuarial firms is if I go and clear my parameters, and sometimes these are called actuarial, then I'm going to come up with a different firm. I thought this wouldn't come up. Mountains or hills? Anything with trees? Okay. So now it gives me Novarest, which actually is one of our actuarial firms that we deal with. So this is an example of, and again, we go into the NIGP codes and see that that they actually have an NIGP code that has consulting services not otherwise classified. So by searching these companies, then we know that we need to, in order to broaden our search for COVID companies, we would need to add additional commodity codes. And so that's what DCBS has been trying to do is, before we ever post a solicitation, we're going to go into the commodity codes and look for what is a broader area that we can solicit someone for. And it's not just for solicitations. I have to say that RFIs, for requests for information, I had the same issue where we were trying to get to health providers. And so we issued an RFI, but we didn't get the pool that we wanted. And so I went back and made it much broader to get an additional pool. So it's not just for solicitations that we use it for any other reason if you wanted to get notice out to people. So those are the ways that DCBS uses COVID firms. And we're always open to suggestions about improving, how to use COVID firms. But our challenge is that as most of agencies experience, a lot of the divisions, when they make small purchases, they're not remembering to go to the COVID website. And so we have a purchase and payment group meeting every other month. Although we haven't been meeting, we've been providing notes. And we provide them reminders to go onto the COBID website and to look at COBID firms first before they choose a vendor to purchase with on their spots card. So any questions? This is a question for Nicole.
So this is Melissa. I would say that this is an important conversation right now as we look at the new DAS procedure and policy on inclusion and the implementation of that in the agencies. And we will bring that topic in May to really go through the procedure and policy so everyone understands. And that procedure and policy is the outcome of Executive Order 1803. And as we continue to see a need to be inclusive and create diversity and to work with small business in our state, this becomes ever more important that we're searching this system, and hopefully Organ Buys will help with that in getting the information out and encouraging folks to propose on our projects. So there is some connection with this presentation to the new procedures and policy that DAS has put out on inclusion. And I don't know if I'm calling it the right topic because I haven't looked at it lately, but it's definitely out there and we have a requirement to comply with that. So hopefully this has been helpful. Is there anything else, Margarita, that you wanted to share today?
I think that's it, unless there were any questions. If not, then I'll stop sharing.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh,
so the next presentation is really on succession planning. And what we're going to do is Kathy Harrison should be online. Are you there, Kathy? I know she was having
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. She was having some connectivity issues. So she's going to talk about what OPO, our ODOT Procurement Office, has done in the space of succession planning. And I'm going to start with saying that this is not, it might be a bit overwhelming when you see it all together because it was a lot of work, but it's definitely a process that you can break down into sections. So you're only doing certain things at certain times to start working in the space of succession planning and just start doing certain things that will help you prepare you for people leaving the organization or retiring or you know, even your own personal positions that you may need to do succession planning on. So this is a really great presentation. We took it pretty far. We did not take it all the way. We've implemented many of the steps, but we didn't do all of it because DAS at the time was also interested in pursuing more of a standardized way of doing succession planning across the agencies. But that was waylaid with COVID and many other things that were coming up at the time. So where we are right now is to just share with you what we've done. And we would be happy to share any of our information with you, or even come and sit down with you to say, well, how did you do this piece and how did you do that piece? We're happy to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to go over our presentation, and you have to present it, Kathy, yourself, unless you sent it to Mary or somebody to put up.
Yes, it has been sent to everyone.
Can you pull it up?
But I'm trying to pull it up right now. If I disconnect, I will call back in so that I can continue to lead the presentation, but Mary will show it on her screen.
Yep, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, I need to just back up one piece. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, so this is the start of a presentation on how we did procurement, started the succession planning process at OPO in ODOT. We first want to acknowledge that succession planning is not a project. A project usually has a discrete beginning and end. A succession planning is an ongoing process. And for that reason, you can treat it like a project with respect to setting it up and have different phases of it, but the process is much longer, and that's what Melissa was referring to. So the succession planning project, we basically wrote down and came up with these objectives, goals, and outcomes, and it's to reduce workforce risk, such as not developing or retaining knowledgeable and skilled employees to perform critical functions. And it actually expands quite a large, it expands over a large number of different roles and functions in the agency. Goals are to identify critical positions, those with higher risk of turnover, identify competencies for the various types of positions. We really focused on the procurement contract specialists, to assess the gaps and develop appropriate bench strength. And bench strength means basically having backup people available with the right talents and strengths and training to be able to take over for a place where you may be one deep with a subject matter expert. Engage employees in discussions for shared understanding of goals and development needs, and to evaluate and adjust strategies as necessary to meet desired goals and to ensure affirmative action, diversity, and inclusion responsibilities. Outcomes are understanding and management of attrition rates. Why do people leave? Let's retain them longer. Sufficiency of bench strength, again, the improved employee engagement. Employee engagement is often shown as the #1 factor in retaining people the longest amount possible. Management of career development opportunities, making sure that we have opportunities for people that seek those. So the overall high-level plan for, like I said, this is the high-level plan. This can be broken into phases, but there's the planning. It is already broken into 4 phases, but it can also be more finely broken. In fact, we did this plan in 3 different phases, and we're not through the whole plan. So the planning phase is to create a high-level plan with milestones.
So I think she froze. Mary, you want to pull the presentation up and I'll keep going and maybe she'll come back.
Okay. I think she was here. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, everyone. Let me mute my. Melissa, do you see? Does everyone see the screen? I think that's where Kathy left off, right?
Yes. Okay. So go to the next. Just go to the next slide. So once we have the high-level plan about basically what we were going to do to implement this, and that might be Kathy, we then broke it down into very specific, much more minute schedule of events that we were going to take on for the execution of the plan. And the first thing we did, and I'm not sure if Kathy's here, but she can speak up.
Just got back.
Okay, so Kathy, I left off here and I was just talking about the high-level plan. So maybe you could go through this strategy document on what we did in the steps that we did it.
Right. So if we can go to the next page, the high-level plan started with a planning phase, and there were several tasks that needed to be done or milestones reached in that area. And then phase 2 was the implementation of the program. The first thing that we had to do was identify potential risks. positional risks. So any position that had someone in it that was very likely to make a move within the next few years, or that had lots of opportunities, and there's a way of scoring that, were considered there. Then we created a knowledge transfer matrix that said, here's all the subject matter expertise that we have in the agency. Who covers it currently? What other resources can we go to if we have questions in this area? And who might be open to being developed in this area in the future? And then we had the request of self-assessments. So for self-assessments, we had to identify, I'm sorry, I skipped over something. We had to identify competency levels for requirements of positions. For example, with respect to the PCS 1, 2, and 3, and also a PCA, we had to say, what is the difference between those levels with regard to every subject area that we knew they needed some level of competency in? We then we created self-assessments and had them take a test on those self-assessments. Now I'm going to quickly go through this, but I'm going to come back and talk about some of these things in just a moment after I get through this slide. Now we have to develop and evaluate. So what we did was we took the self-assessments and the competencies and we compared them. And we said, oh, we've got some deficiencies here. We looked statistically, we did a statistical analysis and said, how many people failed to meet the competency level we had? Because there were several things. Is the competency level too high? Are the employees underscoring themselves? Is there testing bias? There's a number of things involved in that. And so we'll be talking just a little bit about that in a second. We identified potential bench strength for those positions with the high risk. The managers had conversations and we had training with the managers about how to do career development, to take the information into the career development sessions with the employees, to learn to enter things on the individual development plans to help them succeed in areas where they feel like they have a deficit. So it's about helping our employees to be the best that they can be and go anywhere in the agency. We monitored the knowledge transfer matrix and schedule, and knowledge transfer is an area we'll talk about. So we have also the project closure. So each time you separate a phase, because you want to do these in like 6-month bites, because this really is a process and it can go on forever, and you can never actually draw the line and say, oh, okay, we got that done. Well, you have to kind of break it up into 6-month increments. And then at the end of each 6-month increment, you should do a project closure report. So you actually have a plan for what you're going to do in the next phase, but then you also write up what you did in this phase. So we've got a narrative on what was done and when. And so we've done more than 3 phases into this. So I'm going to back up now and go into a little bit more detail about those things that we talked about. Identifying the competencies. This is one that is very important, as you know, because we both identified and defined what those competencies were. We actually had a lessons learned in our process, and that is that, actually it's the next slide, in that when we assessed the competencies, we actually went through our 3-phase process to do this, which was create the self-assessment test, have all of our employees take the test, and then do a statistical analysis on the results. Well, actually, when we did that, we found that some of the questions that we had needed to be thrown out. They weren't very good. They had a lot of misunderstanding in them. The next part was to repeat that process and refine those process steps. So we actually created a revised self-assessment with what we learned from the analysis. And what we did that really, really helped the process was we created subject definitions document. What the subject definitions document is it's a living document that actually helps to define and narrow and more narrowly describe what it is we're actually asking them to assess themselves on. We might put in there, for example, accounting. And really the parts of accounting that we see a PCS using are more likely the principles of internal control, the principles of invoicing, how to reconcile something when we do a breakdown of cost or a spreadsheeting activity, just how to simply reconcile something, understanding the difference between a revenue and an expenditure. These are very simple concepts, but they are an area that they need to have some kind of understanding in. So that's what the subject definition document does. Now, that is included in in all the information that we sent you. You've got a copy of it. So if we have time, we'll delve into that just a little bit more, because after we did that and gave that to people before they took the test, the result was that there was a significantly better and more consistent results. We got up in the 80 percentiles of meeting our needs and what we wanted in terms of competency. We're able to see where we still have work to do or still have things that maybe we need to bridge the gaps, but it was significantly better. Okay. Mary, I know you must have a real difficulty in following me.
Yes, I guess you can't see the slides, right? Or can you tell me when to switch to the next one?
Yeah, I can't see the slides. What I can tell you is what slide I'm on.
Okay.
So gap analysis between expected competencies and self-assessment. So what the gap analysis did was, or is used for, is to identify career paths and how they can get experience in areas where they may be deficient or may even only feel deficient, like they want some improvement in. It also helps to identify training needs. What don't we have training in that PCS need to be successful? It also helps us to add certain components or small areas of need to existing trainings. So we have a large effort going on to kind of pull some of that stuff into our training processes. And sometimes we help, we bring things up to DAS that we think may need to be beefed up in different areas. But they have most of the statewide training, but ODOT also does some individual trainings. Managers include those needs into career development discussions and into the individual development plans. And we help them find resources for achieving what it is they want to learn more about.
Kathy, you have a question. You have a question from Lisa Tran.
Okay.
Hey, Kathy, this is amazing, by the way. I came in, sorry, like I think maybe in the middle of your PowerPoint, and I was just wondering, you know, how do you, I guess, you know, every procurement specialist has their own way of doing things and they have like their own customer service levels. How did you try to flatten that out? Because at DEQ, that's what we're trying to do. You know, we're trying to give some wiggle room to have your own special flavor, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we give the same level of customer service to our contract administrators, our clients. And I was just wondering, like, how you balance that.
Kathy, do you want me to take this? Because it's not necessarily in this particular place that we did this.
Right. What I wanted to say was that's really kind of the level 2. And I'd
Gotcha.
love to talk to you more about that offline, Lisa, because I have so many materials and I can maybe send you some things, but can't do it within this 30-minute presentation.
Oh, sorry.
Lisa, I will just tell you high
Quite all right.
level. I'll tell you high level what we've done is we established values in our organization within OPO about how we relate to our customers. We also developed a vision statement about how we're going to interact with our customers, and we did that as an entire team. And then we put some things in place that are basic, very basic things that folks will all do so that the business partner is experiencing consistency with us. And in certain things like you will discuss the timeline with them, you'll offer options to them, but we all agreed to those things of how we would provide service for the organization. So I can certainly talk to you as well offline about all of that.
Thank you so much. This is really, really good stuff you guys are doing.
Yes, and we've put a lot of the materials in the email that we sent you before this meeting, directly before the meeting. So you'll find some of them, but then there are many more materials. Knowledge, I want to go into knowledge transfer here and just hit that briefly. That's a very big part of succession planning. It's about not losing all of the years of knowledge. And I'm going to use myself as a case in point. Friday is my final day. I am retiring, and I've been there 17 years at ODOT. So I am in the process of doing all of this. Of course, I had a knowledge transfer, put myself through this process and did some things early on. But even towards the end, I was looking for what is it that I know that I might not know that I know that really needs to be set down on paper. So with respect to knowledge transfer, we did the SME matrix. An SME is a subject matter expert. We even have a definition for subject matter expert because at first people didn't like being labeled as a subject matter expert when they're just learning something. And what we said is a subject matter expert is not a be-all, know-all. A subject matter expert is someone who is the point of contact for gaining and leveraging information related to a subject matter. So by doing that, we got significantly better results when we asked people to judge what is their proficiency level with respect to these different areas. So a lot of these documents that we have are things that have been vetted now and have shown to be of value, and they are living documents that can be tweaked over time, but they're an excellent starting point to give you value. So we identified a subject matter expert matrix of who all has subject matter and who are we going to train or who might be able to get it. We did also, there are several knowledge transfer techniques, and I have a list of them that I also provided you of all the different techniques and all of the example forms that I've made up for capturing that information. But knowledge transfer interview was the quickest, surest way to deal with our high risk positions. And so what we did was we had 90-minute conversations, not really an interview. It's kind of like an interview on steroids. They're conversations that you never know where they're going to end up. But it's a list of guided questions where you specifically talk to them about areas of knowledge that they might have. And then you take that back, you create what you think is a straw document for a knowledge capture plan. We then talk to the employee about it and then turn around and go to the employee's manager and get confirmation of what they want to capture. But we have a straw document that says, here's what I would suggest. You know, I heard this, this, and this, and it was really valuable. Well,
Kathy, you have about 10 minutes. I just want to do a time check real quick. You have about 10 minutes.
Good, that'll be perfect. Because this is very high level, very fast. The knowledge capture plan then gets written up. and it's agreed on by the manager, the employee, and this person who monitors the progress, coordinator or whatever. And basically you help them with roadblocks and in getting done anything that's on their knowledge transfer plan. And then you're going to take all that knowledge and you're going to put it in some kind of repository, a library, a directory, something where that knowledge can be leveraged, where people can go to find that information if they have something similar. And that's kind of where we are in the process at ODOT, is developing our directory, our library. So the next page is knowledge transfer techniques. I do want to point out that we've got one of the knowledge transfer techniques is a desk procedure. I didn't include our template because it doesn't really matter what template you use. I'm sure you all have desk procedures. That's one document that can be used to transfer knowledge. The customer knowledge write-up, the subject matter knowledge history write-up. There's a job shadow or mentor write-up when you actually have an imminent transition. Then there's the interview that we talked about, the knowledge transfer interview. And as you can see, I've numbered all the exhibits, and those are also included in the email to you. But this just tells what the purpose is, how they differ, the intended audience. But then once you have had the interview, you're going to do a knowledge capture plan. That's the next slide. This is the template, and it simply says who the person is, what the date of the interview was, and that interview is written up and dated so that you have a correlation there. And then who the position manager is that's going to approve it, and then the date when all the activities should be complete. And you basically have areas, subject matter areas that you're going to do the knowledge capture. You've got a proposed methodology, one of those transfer techniques, and then you have the result. You want to put a expected date or a target date here, and then you also want to write in when you've actually completed it or a goal has been revised, because these are a plan. Sometimes you find out that it's not doable. Usually I find that out because I have I want to ask for a high lift, but we may not be able to accomplish it all, in which case we revise our plan. So career development and managers. There needs to be a training part that happens with the managers that talks about what we're doing, because this process is also new to them, what they can do with it, what the possible interest discussions with the employee, how to specifically develop plans in the IDP to help someone be successful. Consistency in training is very important, and increased engagement with the individual of where do they want to go, not where are we putting them. It's where are they going to want to go? What do their talents represent? Okay, I'm not sure about my time, but I think 5 minutes should cover it. Increased engagement, like I said, that's one of the major desires of succession planning. In here are 10 ways to increase employee engagement. I have sent you this PowerPoint, so I do advocate that you read that. The most important thing here, the only way you can create trust is by being open, consistent, and fair. That is a fact. That is something that is used by many managers and understood by many managers, and maybe not every manager. But understanding these things are going to help you have a better relationship. Now, the next thing, where we're going from here, succession planning, maintenance, and continuous improvement. Maintenance is, I have two areas here. I basically say, okay, we've created all this stuff. Now we have to keep it up. I've created a schedule and I've adjusted it based on expectations. I thought at first we could do it biannually. Now I'm saying every 3 years, because we just don't have the time to devote to this. So this is where you put out your sample plan for your maintenance, for knowledge transfer, all your activities, and then the maturation is the continuous improvement. This tells you things that you need to continue to work on. And then the last part is the next phase to come, which is the position management. Incorporating and having discussions with HR about minimum qualifications, with classification, with budgeting, about how do we staff our organization correctly? How do we create the right career paths and everything? This is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. This is the real end result, one of the real important end results of the succession planning. So this was just a high-level overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions offline or get you any exhibits that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Just so everyone knows that all of this, again, wasn't done at once, but the really important things that came out of this was we were able to identify what the skill sets need to be for a position. And we identified what the level of proficiency should be based on the classification in a particular area, like she said, accounting. But the very first thing we did was go in and look at every single position to say which positions are high risk and things. And we had some criteria we applied on determining if it was high risk, because you can't really ask people when they're going to retire, and you can't ask people about their age. But what you can do is say, do we have people that are one deep in knowledge? That's a risk factor. How long has the person been here? How long has the person been here? So we had several criteria to apply to say which positions are really high risk for us that we really have to go after first. And then we just determined the competencies. And the competencies for this group, I think, are going to be very important as we continue to look at what we need in the procurement professional for today and into the future. So I really hope you look at some of those documents if it did get sent out. I'm happy. I know Kathy's retiring, but I was certainly key working with her in this whole project. I think it's really important, and I'd be happy to come back and break it down even further for you if you'd like that. But I really, I tell people it's a little overwhelming when you look at it all together, but it really can be done if you take it in smaller chunks.
Absolutely.
Is there any questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Bye.
So we're not going to get to our video again, but we're going to get to it sometime this year. But we just have so many other really important things. And I will tell you that Jan and I have a long list of agenda items to cover for the next 6 months. So we have lots coming your way to share with you and help build our skills and knowledge and how we work together. So does anybody want to talk about their agency happenings right now in the last 5 minutes?
This is Karen Johnson. DOJ's got a new lawyer. I just want to let everybody know his name's Warren Nickerson. He started with us last Monday. Looks like he's going to be a great asset.
Great. What's his name?
Warren Nickerson.
Warren Nickerson.
Yep.
Does he specialize in any particular area?
IT. So, of course, my favorite.
All right. Anyone else have any agency happenings they'd like to share?
I would. This is Lil Gray at Education, and I shared in the chat that Friday is also my last day at the state. I am retiring May 1st, and the recruitment for my position is underway, and Rick is reviewing. Quite a few people applied. There's another position open in our agency, and so if you know PCS 3 is what we're looking for. But I plan to end my career on Friday. I've been with the agency 25 years, And I'm ready to retire, go see my grandkids, my mom, my brother, and my family that lives in Texas and Louisiana, and finally make it to Alaska, my travel point. So I do want to say thank you to everyone who's a part of this DPO council. I was there when it started, and I know over the last 10 or 11 years that it has made a difference in the way state government is ran. It's pulled together and seen changes and put through the legislature changes that we needed desperately. It's an important part of state government. And I'm proud to say that I've been a member and a DPO for the state of Oregon. And I just want to thank you for your support and your help over the years. DOJ has always been there, Karen, to help us. And so anyway, I leave you kind of, I feel like I'm leaving my friends, but you never leave your friends, you only leave your work. And so I just want to say blessings to you and thank you so much for your support.
All right, go out and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Lil.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, hi, this is Josh with Business Oregon. Just really quick, as you probably read, Business Oregon has been really busy serving businesses in Oregon to help support them as they've been impacted by COVID over the past year. So we are hearing that we are going to be receiving quite a bit of additional funding that we'll need to push out over the next couple months before the end of the biennium. That being said, we are in dire need of employee support. So if there's any agencies out there who have specialists who have grant and loan contracting experience, and they could spare that employee for a couple months, our director has asked me to reach out to this group, and our director would be more than willing to speak to your director to see what we can do. Like I said, it's going to be about 2 to 3 months that we're going to need to push out just about twice the amount of contracts that we're used to. So we can use some of this. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. So if there's any future topics that you would like us to bring back to discuss, or if you want to know more about the succession plan or anything that was presented today, please let me know and our Jan, and we'll be happy to bring things forward for you folks. And I think that leaves us to adjourn the meeting today, unless Jan, you have anything you'd like to share.
I just wanted to remind everybody that the Oregon Buys topic is really important, and Melissa and I have been working with the Oregon Buys teams to kind of put together the slideshows for each of the DPO meetings. And so if you have things that you want to hear about related to Oregon Buys, if you can funnel those to me, I will also send an email out to the group in a week or so, or a couple of weeks, just to remind you. Thanks.
All right. All right, thank you. And you folks have a great afternoon. See you next time.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.